and it should tell us when we are live. Get this over with. At least we don't have to write a blog.
That's right.
So,
Better writing.
Yep. Okay, I'll see if I can see. Okay. So there will be you don't see it. I don't see it coming up. Do you?
I do.
Okay, but you don't see it on my Facebook.
Well, I got a notification that
we went live?
Yep, and I clicked on it and there we are.
Okay, so hey everyone, I am Sarah Dungan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Oh, you know what, Beau?
Yeah.
There's one thing I need to do. I think I need to mute. I don't know. I think we can hear it. It's okay.
I'm getting an echo.
And
I clicked on it and there we are.
Okay. Oh. I muted, so you don't hear that. So now you hear me. Okay. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a licensed professional counselor. I am sitting with my old and dear friend. We're old, Beau.
We are.
Old and dear friend, Beau Armistead. Let me tell you a little bit about Beau. Beau is the director of Sojourn Counseling, a nonprofit counseling practice with the goal of providing quality mental health care to everyone, regardless of their ability to pay. They offer counseling with microcurrent neurofeedback, which helps restore a brain by gently stimulating brain waves, bringing them into optimal performance. They've seen many clients benefit from the treatment who deal with anxiety, depression, ADHD, insomnia, anger, memory, migraine, symptoms of a concussion, and symptoms of PTSD. Beau's passion is helping people heal from trauma and PTSD. Now listen to this. This is pretty phenomenal. He is a EMDR therapist, a certified clinical trauma professional, a certified TBRI therapist. I don't know what that stands for. Do you?
I do. It's trust-based relational intervention. So it's a type of therapy working with adopted children.
Oh, that's good to know, Beau.
They adopted children. That's how I use it, but it's the lady who developed it, Karen Purvis, she calls it working with children from hard places. So it can be any kind of children with trauma or children who spent time in orphanages or foster care systems, that kind of thing.
Okay. A certified IASIS, microcurrent. What does that stand for?
It's ISIS. It's a word.
It's a word? Mm-hmm. What kind of word is that?
Well, it's unfortunately, it sounds a lot like ISIS, but it's ISIS. It's a.
You didn't create the word, I know.
I didn't create the word. It's a Greek word that means healing.
Oh, okay. Microcurrent feedback provider, and this is my favorite, a certified hippie. Although we were talking before this, you're a lot busier. You're a pretty busy hippie. I got to say that.
I'm a busy hippie. Yep.
You are. Okay. So Beau, I really am curious about the current neurofeedback and how I'm really curious about optimal performance. As a recovering perfectionist, I'm like, this sounds really interesting. Right? Yeah. So can you help me understand that?
Yep. So the reality is that when we've lived life long enough, our brain waves change, and they can change as a result of just life in general, trauma, any kind of blow to the head. There are a lot of things that change how our brains perform electrically. And so microcurrent neurofeedback comes in and it like gently stimulates brain waves to bring them into an optimal performance. And so when I say gently, like the microcurrent is hundreds of times less electrical current that goes into your brain than when you're holding your phone to your head.
Do you feel it?
You don't feel it, but you do feel the results of it. And I don't know if we haven't really talked much about this, but really 85+% of clients that receive microcurrent neurofeedback notice positive change within the first 1 to 3 sessions and then sustainable, like lifelong lasting change after 10 sessions. And so,
And what would the changes, like, how would they notice? Like, I guess their anxiety's decreased.
Yep. So a lot of people just after they first begin notice, like, I just feel a little better. Like I feel like I can smile when for no particular reason. I feel lighter in my mood. But it really depends. I mean, a lot of people notice sleeping better. Depending on kind of what you're dealing with is how you're going to notice a change. But we've seen, remarkable results treating anxiety, depression, insomnia, ADD, ADHD, people with autism, migraines, concussion, PTSD, fibromyalgia.
Do you work with kids? You said autism.
Yep. Yeah.
What's the youngest you've worked with?
Probably 9 or 10, maybe. Probably 9, maybe even less. Maybe I think we had 7. But there's like the microcurrent neurofeedback safe for all ages. So if you're
Okay.
5 years old or 105 years old, it doesn't matter. It's safe because it's just a very gentle brain stimulation that doesn't.
And so what it does is it stimulates the brain to help the pathways work better.
So it stimulates brain waves, and this may be a bad analogy, but almost like a heart defibrillator zaps the heart to shock it into rhythm.
Right.
On a very, very minute scale, it's stimulating brain waves, particularly delta, to bring it back into its optimal place. And so it kind of gives it a spike and then brings it back down in order to bring it into its optimal performance. And I was about to say something else. So yeah, you'd ask a question. I was going to try to answer it.
Yeah. I don't remember that question.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about like it would lower your anxiety. It may help you sleep better. Well, I guess while you're doing this, are you doing any therapy for behavioral changes?
So I recommend people do therapy alongside microcurrent neurofeedback if we're treating something like anxiety and depression. Now, if you've had a concussion and you're light sensitive and sound sensitive and having headaches, come in with a standalone treatment of microcurrent. If you're dealing with something that's more of an emotional mental health issue, I always recommend having therapy alongside it. This is like an adjunct. And the reason I started microcurrent neurofeedback is to add on to EMDR therapy, because most of the clients that I see are living with PTSD or trauma, and we can reprocess events and memories with EMDR. But then a second part of that is resetting the brain that's been kind of jacked up through trauma.
Right.
It's kind of a double whammy approach to processing the events and resetting the brain. So it's like a more whole healing for the brain and for the person.
So you are very trauma specialized. Tell me where your passion for trauma, where'd that come from?
I've always been very intrigued by EMDR therapy. Before I was even licensed as a counselor, I knew about EMDR therapy. I read about it, studied it, and thought it was just amazing because of how it allows a brain to go through and heal traumatic experiences. The reason I think specifically I moved into a direction of just focusing on trauma is we traveled for years with the ministry. We reached out to people who live on the road. Many people over the years, I might even say the majority of people we encountered that live on the road had lived with and were living with trauma. And I think oftentimes people living with trauma, living with PTSD are misunderstood. They're perceived as an angry person or, like whatever.
Right.
But after hearing hundreds of stories, I know like there's like this common denominator of, people weren't born this way. They've experienced life in such a way that's caused them to interact with people in life the way they do. And it's not always a bad thing, but like for them personally, having to live with the hypervigilance and the sometimes issues with anger, not being able to sleep, having a hard time in a relationship, all these things as a result of just things that they've experienced, not because they're bad or difficult people. Just really drawn to helping people
Right.
because of people I'd known.
So I think I don't know if I can switch this. I'm going to switch it. Oh, so now I'm going to switch it. So now we have both of us up together. See, you can see. Okay. I don't know if it's going to switch on Facebook Live, but do you have any success with substance abuse and dealing with substance abuse with this? Have you seen that?
Yes. So again, I've never, back to EMDR therapy, I've never known anyone who I'd consider an addict, someone with a substance abuse problem, who is not just trying to feel better because of something they've experienced, you know? And so oftentimes, and now that I have been working with trauma for so long, you know, you see a lot of common denominators. When you see someone who is dealing with alcohol or drug addiction or pornography addiction or whatever, basically people are trying to not feel what they're feeling because what they're feeling is very uncomfortable, right?
Right.
And oftentimes that comes from traumatic life experiences. And so, you know, when people are in and out of rehabs and like, well, I've been to rehab, you know, 8 times and I'm still having a hard time with drug addiction or alcohol addiction, you know, it's because, my opinion is because you haven't really addressed why you're drinking or using drugs to begin with.
Right.
It's trying to modify behavior. And so when we get to the root of things, process through traumatic events that are causing you to have such high anxiety, such hypervigilance, such, you know, living a very uncomfortable, miserable life a lot of times. And that's why you're drinking or using drugs to medicate. If you deal with that stuff, then you no longer have the need so much to use drugs or alcohol or whatever the addiction is. But so there, again, EMDR is helpful in that. But then ISS microcurrent neurofeedback helps to create new neural pathways. And so it changes the neuroplasticity of the brain, allowing a person to create new neural pathways. So if they're working on something like changing a behavior like an addiction, it becomes easier to modify that behavior because their neural pathways are more easily changed with the microcurrent neurofeedback.
Okay, so then I'm just curious if I'm calling, this is very interesting to me. If I'm calling and I'm a client, like you have to assess, you've got all these different things. You could do EMDR, you could do the current. Do you have an assessment? How do you do that? How do you figure out which treatment to use?
Well, you know, my opinion, and the guy who trained me in microcurrent neurofeedback, what he says and what I believe is true is if you have a brain, ISS can help you because I don't think any of our brains necessarily work at their optimal performance all the time, right?
Right.
And so if you got a brain, it can help. So anybody who says, hey, I'm dealing with this thing, automatically I say, well, ISS will probably benefit you. If you're dealing with trauma, PTSD, and trauma, and we could talk for a long time about this, but trauma can go in like big T traumas, little T traumas can go all over the place.
Right.
If you're dealing with trauma or PTSD, EMDR, hands down, is the treatment that's going to help you. And as sort of an add-on to that, the microcurrent neurofeedback is very helpful in that.
Wow.
If you call and say, I've got anxiety, I've got depression, I've got, you know, insomnia, I've got whatever, you know, I'll say, hey, give neurofeedback a try. And I can, with both those things, with EMDR and with the microcurrent neurofeedback, I'm so confident in each of them that I don't have a problem telling anyone really this can help you because we see it every day here, and
Wow.
for long enough that I don't hesitate in telling people they can benefit from it. So
how big is your practice?
Meaning,
how many people are working with you?
Okay, so there's myself and 2 other counselors, and then Landon is a girl that works here with us. Very grateful for her, and she is our ISS, kind of our lead technician here. All of us are trained in ISS, but Landon does it every day, and she's fantastic. So yeah, myself, Chris Cargile, Lindsey Brown, and Landon Jones are here.
Okay, and then you just are opening up you're opening up in Huntsville. You're expanding. Talk about that. So
that is, so here in Birmingham, this is Sojourn Counseling, nonprofit counseling practice. In Huntsville, we're Reboot Wellness, and it's just microcurrent neurofeedback. We're not doing counseling there. It's a separate business altogether, but same service as far as the neurofeedback goes. So we're excited about that. Started that in July, so we're just getting off the ground there.
That's awesome.
It's fun.
Well, I work with a lot of families of divorce, and so that, I mean, I could see how sending individual family members for just coping with the trauma of divorce could be really helpful, for sure.
Yeah. So tell me, I mean, I know you and what you do, but
Yeah, no, I mean, I do work with families of divorce. I do love to help families have hard conversations, basically. And I do it in lots of different ways. It could be co-parenting counseling. It could be reunification therapy, where there's been a really difficult divorce and a child has aligned with one parent, perhaps rejected another parent. It could be mediation. Could be one of the things I've started to do. And I think this is a little bit of the result of the pandemic. Divorces, they're saying, are on the rise. And so I have gotten trained in discernment counseling, where I'm helping couples say, we're not going to sit down and solve your problems, but are your problems solvable? And is this worth you putting the time and the effort into doing it? And what I really love is there's 3 paths. You can stay status quo in your marriage. And some people do that because it's too hard to make a decision. It's too overwhelming, or we're not at a place where we can make a decision with our kids and things like that. Or you can move to divorce or separation. Or the 3rd path is 6 months of couples counseling with divorce off the table. And what I appreciate so much about discernment counseling is oftentimes couples get thrown into couples counseling, and you've got somebody not really bought into the process and they don't want to do it. And so you're wasting your time and your money with having somebody that's not interested in, being there. So by the time we get to when I have both of them saying, let's go ahead and I want to do couples counseling, and they may do that with me, they may do it with someone else, but they're bought into the process. And so now we have 2 people working in and involved and invested in it. Or they may choose the other path of separation and divorce, but it gives them a safe place to come and kind of talk about this transition. So that's something I've been kind of passionate about. Okay, let's talk about the pandemic. Want to?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
As a mental health professional during a pandemic,
Yeah.
Tell me, I don't know, what are you seeing in your clients? What with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all therapists at this point are probably seeing an increase in anxiety, just in various ways. It's hard for a lot of people to be stuck at home for months. For some people that's not only hard, but it's abuse is on the rise, like you said, divorce.
Right.
So it can be a really bad situation at home. But even if it's not a really bad situation, being stuck at home, being quarantined, a lot of people are out of work or have less work, or relationships are harder, social life is gone. So it's a difficult time for everybody. I don't know anyone who is enjoying the current state of things that we're living with, and even down to people get frustrated about having to wear a mask, or people who don't wear masks and they're frustrated about that. So there's just so many things that are having to shop differently, or so a lot of new stressors that people are having to deal with. So, and I think people are coping, people are managing, but definitely I've seen a lot of people not sleeping as well, having different relationship dynamics, being out of work. Several clients have lost loved ones due to pandemic. And so it's tough.
Yeah, I would say that too. I think the thing that I'm seeing a lot is uncertainty, just the uncertainty of the future. You can't count on anything. You don't know if you're traveling. You don't know what the holidays are going to look like. You don't know if the kids are going to be in school. And there's just uncertainty, where if people that really struggle with control, you can't control a thing. I mean, there's no control. So in terms of tips that you would share, I'll give a tip and you give a tip as a mental health professional. Okay. So you want to go first? What's one of your tips you would give to your clients?
Oh my goodness. There's so many, but I think, one thing is I'm encouraging people not to look at the news all the time.
Mm,
People are oftentimes just addicted to the news. Like every 5 minutes, let me see what's going on, and I think there's too much anyway. Even outside of a pandemic, outside of you racial tension,
election year.
outside of election, outside of all the things that we're dealing with, like there's too much news anyway. I don't think we're designed to know about every hard thing that happens in every corner of the world 24 hours a day.
Mm,
And so, I mean, I encourage people to, if you need to look at the news once a day just to feel like you know what's going on in the world, that's fine. You're knowing it's not going to change anything really.
right.
You watch it if you feel like you need to. But for people who will, wake up in the morning and watch an hour and a half of news and then watch news on their lunch break and check online news sources and then come home at night and turn the news on, like it's just too much. And all that does is keeps your anxiety level amped up.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
one very practical thing that
I know. I think that's a great one. I've actually stopped doing that as well. So I think that's a great tip. I love hearing that because it's not a tip I would have shared. So I love it. Okay, my tip would be to really begin, and I think now that I'm in the business, I do this better, but I'm not always perfect at it. But to begin to really acknowledge what you're feeling, like know what you're feeling, like take your temperature, like understand I'm lonely. I often say to my clients, if you know what you're feeling, you can ask for what you need. And people can either give it to you or they can't. You could say, well, I need you to do this, but the person may not be able to give it. But at least you know how to ask because you know how you're feeling. So I would say really be reflective about how you're feeling. Well, I'm tired. I don't need to go out tonight. I actually think I need to stay in and go to bed early. Or that news really just jacked me up. I think I need to turn off the TV and open a book.
right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What's tip number 2?
Well, just to kind of dovetail on what you're saying there, being aware of what you're feeling is a huge part of just self-care, and self-care is important all the time. But when we're living in an environment of just such high stress and such uncertainty, self-care is so important. And that, and I like to talk to clients about self-care involves mind, body, and spirit, because that's who we are. Self-care is not just doing yoga or going running. Self-care is not just eating well. Self-care is not just spending time quietly each day in some sort of quiet space, because we don't have much of that. All the things that like make us up, we're mind, body, and spirit. And so being intentional every day and caring for yourself in terms of your mind, mentally and emotionally, spiritually, whatever that may look like for you, and physically. And physically is like sleeping well, eating well, exercising. And so lots of aspects just in self-care. And like you said, turn off the news, open a book, that's self-care. That is, and people all the time say, well, if I'm self-care is selfish, I should be caring for others. Well, you can't care for others if you're not caring for yourself. And so if you look out for yourself and take care of yourself in all the ways that you are important, mind, body, and spirit, then you're available to take care of the people around you that you love and care for. So.
Yeah. I think that's so helpful, Beau. What I love about that is I think with self-care, a lot of times I do focus on the physical, and I love that you said mind, body, spirit. I'm going to use that. That's why I like doing these. See, you get little tips. Okay. My second tip would be, so with the uncertainty, I've been thinking about, kids going back to school and the uncertainty of, well, we don't even know if school's going to stay, schools are shutting down, and just trying to, kind of play the what if game. Well, what if that does happen? Well, what if that happens? Well, what if that happens? And going down the track of sometimes our anticipation is worse than our participation. And then reminding yourself, how important is it and how much control do I have? So I think a lot of times I'll say to myself, how important is this? And what I don't really have any control over that. So there's only so much I can do. what's tip number? Was that, oh, tip number, where are we on 2 or 3?
I think we've done two.
We've done 2. Okay.
Want another?
Yeah. Yeah. Give me another.
Um, so I think that another thing that's uh, coming to mind is, so we're kind of always in a place of operating out of habits, and we're sort of creatures of habit, I guess you could say. And so in a time where a lot of new things are forced upon us in terms of like what we can and cannot do or whatever, we can allow, and this kind of applies to life in general, but right now we can sort of allow life to happen to us passively, or we can be proactive and intentional in what we do. And so that our habits aren't being created for us by being passive and just letting life happen, because that will happen. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a huge rise currently in alcohol sales
Yep.
and drug sales.
Yep.
And again, all the vices, pornography is a huge rise. Like
Mhm.
all the vices, there's a huge rise in, and it's because for a lot of people, instead of being proactive in the decisions they're making, being intentional in decisions they're making, creating new habits, just because life is happening to them, and instead of deciding what they're going to do, they just let happen what happens.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of rambling there, but being intentional in the habits that we create is super important. So having routine, creating habits that are, going to serve you well and go into your self-care is really important, because otherwise we wake up in the morning, we're passive about life happens to us, and we can kind of get steamrolled by life.
Yeah.
And 3 or 4 or 5 months into a pandemic, you're like, oh crap, well, how did I come up with this new habit that I don't really like, that now I've got to work to break,
Yes.
instead of choosing.
Yeah. I don't know if you have felt this, but I have felt it recently, just like a lack of motivation, a lack of motivation to just, I don't know, like sometimes I'll, want to work on my business and I'm just like, I don't have any motivation to do it. So, and then I think, okay, well, I got to go back to the goal. I got to go back to what my goal is and why I'm doing what I'm doing and things like that.
Yep.
So
having a goal is huge, because if you've got a goal and you've got purpose, you know why you're waking up in the morning. You've got something to work towards, instead of just like, okay, I'm going to wake up and make it till lunch.
Yeah.
Like, having something intentional you're working towards is huge.
Yeah. I think the last tip for me is, in terms of like all the uncertainty, I do rely on my faith a lot. And I know that looks like different things to different people, but my faith provides a lot of certainty for me personally, to just say, things are out of control, but I do believe in a God that's in control.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Well, anything else, Beau?
No, this is fun. Thanks
We did it.
for setting this up.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to end the meeting, and then I'll talk to you, Beau, in just a minute.
Awesome. Thanks.
See if I can.